Yeah.
Good evening and welcome to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are broadcasting to you from the gun store here in Las Vegas on East Tropicana. We are on KSHP Radio 1400 AM and simultaneously we are coming to you on YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin on YouTube. Tonight's guests are one of my regular guests, homicide detective Phil Ramos, retired from Metro PD, and the empty chair belongs to the attorney stuck in traffic, who is Paola Armani, who is a criminal defense lawyer here in town at a very prestigious firm, and she will be here in a minute. She's working her way through the cones, and unfortunately, with the radio time, and we start on time. So we'll fill in for her and give her opinions until she wanders in the door. Phil, a little bit of your background in investigations.
Well, I spent a few years in homicide, 12 years here in Las Vegas, Metropolitan Police Department. 33-year career. My last 12 were in homicide. I handled 340 plus murders, about 300 suicides, and about 50 officer-involved shootings. And had a pretty good conviction rate with my partner, Jimmy Vaquero. He and I had a pretty good conviction rate, and it was a good job. Stood over a lot of dead bodies and figured out who killed them.
I have a call. Hang on one second.
Okay.
Hi, Paola. Oh, Fiona, maybe she's out at the front door. Do you have anybody over there? No, we don't. Okay. Hopefully she's here. We will go out and look for her momentarily. As regular listeners know, this show is about guns and politics related thereto and self-defense issues. There are several hundred uses of defensive firearms every week in the United States, usually not covered by the media. In reality is because in most of them, the defensive person, the individual citizen points his gun at a bad guy, and a bad guy runs away, and that's not newsworthy, so you never hear about it.
Right.
But we always pull some of those to discuss on the show. We generally leave the names out. Paola, how are you, darling?
Good.
Now we look much better.
Thank you.
I
Sorry.
told everybody what an outstanding lawyer you were, and that you were getting through the traffic cone jungle
so
out there. In front of our store in Tropicana, we have 2 lanes locked off for the last several weeks. We got concrete barriers. They're making it wider and whatever, and it's an absolute mess, this whole end of town and every end of town. So
Big mess.
all you local guys know that. So you leave an hour early to get to work like the rest of us. Anyway, we are going to go over some cases that happened this week and then some political stuff at the end with some gun laws that are coming up and things like that. We will start out, as we usually do, with some shootings that took place. And these are, I get through looking at 50 or 60 shootings every week and pick out ones that have a point that I want to bring up to people who own guns or carry concealed or have a gun at home for self-defense, to what the guy did right or wrong or so forth. And a lot of these are excellent shootings, but we look at it and go, we could have tweaked it just a little bit and had a lot less chance of a lawsuit or something else happening. So we'll go through theirs. I leave the names out, and because what matters is what happened and how the people reacted. This is from the Star Tribune in Minneapolis, Minnesota on the 24th in Brooklyn Park, which is near Minneapolis. A man with a permit to carry a firearm fatally shot a would-be armed robber. The men exchanged gunfire just after 8 p.m. in the 7500 block of Imperial Drive. The permit holder told police the man tried to rob him at gunpoint at the end of his own driveway. Police say witnesses are backing up his story. Officers arrived at the scene and found a 20-year-old suspect who was attempting the robbery on the ground. The citizen targeted in the robbery had a valid permit to carry a gun, and he was not arrested. Officers recovered both guns at the scene, that is the shooter's gun and the robber's gun. It's being investigated now by the Hennepin County District Attorney's Office to see if charges should be filed. the story is a pretty straightforward self-defense story. The reason I pulled it, because a state representative, one of their assembly people or whatever they call their lower house, got involved in talking about this to the public, and he commented that validates the fact that their 2003 law allows people to carry guns in public. That's when they started their issuing of concealed carry permits in 2003. He said a loss of life is a tragedy, but when the criminal pulls a gun, they are risk ending their life. Concealed carry works. The press involved came out and said as of early 2016, there are more than 221,000 gun permit holders in Minnesota. That's currently about 1 in 19 of eligible Minnesota adults have a permit to carry. The police haven't released the two people involved in this conversation, but in this confrontation rather. But you've got 221,000 concealed carry holders. That just struck me, because you've got a 19-to-1 odds that the guy you're trying to rob has a permit, plus how many other people are carrying guns, even though they don't have a permit. I don't recommend that, but a lot of people do that, especially in high crime areas. That's not really good odds for repeat offenders. Most of these guys do, Phil, you'll know, they do 15, 20 robberies before they get caught by the police. Well, I would guess they're going to hit about 15, where the odds are now they're more likely to get shot than get away.
Yeah, they're better off having the cops chase them than armed citizens, because, the cops have much more stringent rules of engagement. There's a very strict criteria for officers when they have to discharge their firearms. Citizens don't have those kinds of restrictions. And so you're better off, apparently in Minnesota, having the cops confront you rather than the citizen.
Yeah, that's just a startling number of people. And we're looking at the whole war in Syria probably doesn't have 221,000 armed men on the ground, counting all sides. And this is one state.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to talk about here is a little bit on the tactical issue. And they didn't tell us in any of the police reports how far apart the individuals were and so forth. But the drawing a gun on somebody who is already pointing one at you is an interesting tactical decision.
Yeah, it's pretty risky.
Generally, unless he's already firing, you have his moment where you get a chance to fire, and his brain is still going, oh my God, he's pulling a gun while you're shooting. But the problem is, if he doesn't die instantly, which most people don't, he's in the process of shooting, and you're probably going to get shot too. In this case, they weren't. We really recommend, if you're in that close as a firearms instructor, that you do something if you can reach him, do something to deflect the gun as you fire, because it's very likely he's going to fire shortly after you do, a second or two, maybe, because when you hit him, he's not immediately going to drop dead like they do in the movies.
Well, not only that, but if the bad guy is prepared to shoot and he sees that you're drawing your weapon and it's going to take you time to draw the weapon, aim, and fire, he may react before
he may actually fire first. Yeah. It's going to be close, depending on the ages of the people involved. The youngsters are usually a little faster and so forth, but I have to leave it to the judgment of the concealed weapon owner. It worked for him.
Right.
So obviously it was a tactical choice. Certainly, if he's pointing a gun at you, turning and running is not a good choice. So anyway, if you have questions or comments, you can send us an email at bob@firedupmail.com, or please friend us on Facebook. A little note out front for that. If you have a question or comment for our attorney or for our homicide detective, if you just send it to bob@firedupmail, I will forward it to them, so you don't have to have 1,400 addresses. The Gun Store, I want to remind all the listeners, offers free concealed carry permit classes 3 times a week. And you can find those classes on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. This one seems straightforward. You'll see why I have it here. This is WSVN TV Channel 7 in North Miami Beach, Florida. An attempted carjacker has been hospitalized after one of the victims fired in self-defense. One of 4 suspects approached a Honda Civic in traffic. Without reading all the details, the Honda Civic is stopped at a signal and jammed traffic, and a car, it stopped in traffic, and another car pulls up nearby. Several suspects got out, and one of them walks over to the Honda Civic with a gun in it. And the woman, there's a couple in the car, woman driving, man in the car with her. She sees the guy coming up with the gun, screams at her passenger, there's a guy the guy's got a gun, he's got a gun. The passenger then drew his firearm and fired 2 rounds, according to the investigative detective. The detective said he was afraid for his life. He was protecting himself and his girlfriend. The would-be carjacker was rushed to nearby trauma center, and it actually had a name, but I couldn't pronounce it. Welcome to Florida. Rushed him to a trauma center in stable but serious condition. The other 3 suspects all fled. Police are searching for the other 3. This happened if you're from there at Northeast 159th Street and 16th Avenue. Try to throw that in if we got viewers that can go now look at the scene. Neither of the passengers of the Honda were injured. 1 gun was recovered. The police didn't say whether it was they got the shooter's gun or they got the kid's gun that approached the car. Here's the rub. The 13-year-old suspect is now recovering and will be charged once he's released from the hospital with attempted carjacking with a firearm. This is a really valid shooting.
Yeah.
But
he's going to get all kinds of heat because the 13-year-old was a suspect. Or, you know, what he's still.
But at the same time, the 13-year-old, I mean, is armed and dangerous, and is a valid threat to somebody. And, you know, it's sad that of the age and that a 13-year-old even has a gun, but for the person that shot, he was just as, there's still that reasonable fear as if it was a 13-year-old opposed to a 50-year-old.
There's an absolutely valid shooting.
100%.
Sure.
The problem with it is the repercussions later on. You're going to have a lot of hateful backlash from people in the community. I don't know the races of the people involved, you know, and if this is a white shooter and a black kid, it's even worse, or the other way around. Really doesn't matter. Everybody hates everybody. Welcome to America these days. But here we have the CCW holder needing to fire his gun. There's somebody walking up at his girlfriend, actually, with the gun, and he fired across his girlfriend, apparently toward her. This case will probably never go away. This is not going to be, okay, let's all go home.
No, and you can bet that, you know, the parents of this kid, if, you know,
why did you shoot? He hadn't shot you yet.
Right.
Here it comes.
And you know, you can bet that the media is going to come up with this kid's 4th grade school picture and use that instead of a picture of what he looked like presently. And it's just going to be a terrible thing. And we talk about that all the time, that once you've made that decision to discharge and you either injure someone or you kill someone, you're going to have to live with that for the rest of your life. And in this case, like we're saying, this guy's 100% justified in what he was doing, but it was a 13-year-old kid.
Anybody here would have done the same thing.
Right.
You've got to save your own life. And it's unfortunate that it turns out to be a 13-year-old, and now you're basically stuck with this. And this will no doubt follow these people for the rest of their lives. That you know, this is witness protection program time sometimes.
Well, and you know, if there's any good side to this, is it seems like the 13-year-old is going to survive.
Yes, that's
you know, it wasn't fatality. So.
very fortunate.
Yeah,
very fortunate. This would be a whole lot worse. You'll hear people who don't know any better once in a while tell you, if you shoot the guy, make sure he dies and that kind of crap. No, wrong. You want them to survive. It's less hardship on you. It's less on the lawsuits. It's less, if you're wrong in the shooting, it's less jail time. You're better off the guy survives. You know, first you got to make you safe. Then if you have time, make sure he survives. Do first aid, you know, whatever you can do.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, Bob, that you make, because officers are trained. If you fire at someone and you hit them, once the threat is over with, you doggone well better start rendering first aid to the person that you shot instead of standing there watching them bleed out, and because that's gonna haunt you every time.
And it could come into a criminal charge if you
It very well
watch the guy gurgling, dying,
Yeah.
and you
And
do
a civil
absolutely nothing.
lawsuit.
Sure.
You gotta worry about that too.
Right.
That's how you change a self-defense thing into a murder,
Mhm.
by your attitude and actions at the scene. We offer ladies only shooting and personal safety class twice a month, second and fourth Friday, taught by Maggie Mordana. There's a whole lot of stuff on the media right now. Channel 13 ran a story 2 nights ago on her class and interviewed one of her students and me and Maggie. Great story. I want to thank Channel 13. Steve did a great job putting it together. And you'll find it on the internet if you search Channel 13 on ladies self-defense or ladies gun sales. I forget what the name of the title is, but it's on there. The tape's on the website for Channel 13. Okay. Next class is Thursday, March 8th. You can sign up on our website, thegunstorlasvegas.com. I told a couple of dog shooting stories this week, simply because when I was in part of a CCW class a few days ago, we immediately had a guy ask, if a dog's attacking, can you shoot a dog? And the instructor was trying to work around the answer to that. And it's just like, well, it's the same thing with a human. If a human's attacking you, can you shoot him?
Yeah.
What human? How big? How mean? How far away? With what weapon and so forth? So I pulled a couple of dog stories, and both of them turned out to be pretty good shootings that I found. This first one is from WHAV Radio in Haverhill, Massachusetts. Wave Radio. Got it? WHAV. Yeah, okay. On the 24th, the incident occurred at 6:30 p.m. on Sunday in a park near the rear of 42 Washington Street, according to the Haverhill police captain. The resident reported he and his teenage son were walking their mini poodle in the park when 2 pit bulls charged toward the son, who had the mini poodle in his possession. He was actually holding the little dog, the mini poodle. And the owner of the pit bulls came in the area, and one of the pit bulls was snapping and biting at the mini poodle the kid is holding, according to this captain of the police department. The adult owner of the mini poodle told the owner of the pit bull to control his dogs. The owner apparently could not control the pit bulls, and the teenage son holding the mini poodle was bitten in the encounter. Holding the poodle, and the dog went after him. The owner of the mini poodle then shot the pit bull in the rear quarter. He was properly licensed for the gun, and no charges were brought. So what I'm giving you is good shooting. I mean, he's actually snapping at the kid and actually bit the kid. Not seriously hurt, but I mean, of course you're going to shoot the dog. That's, you can't go, I've got a gun, stop. The warnings don't work real well with dogs. But anyway, the reason I'm laughing is the next part. The owner of the pit bull, of the mini poodle, was cited. Wasn't charged with shooting, but he was cited for having an unlicensed mini poodle. They didn't have a dog license. The owner of the pit bull, of course, was cited for failure to license, failure to leash, failure to vaccinate, and not control his dog. There's some other goofy charge there pending. No other charges are expected for the owner of the miniature poodle. Obviously a valid shooting. We've got another problem with this one. Because of an organization out there called PETA, shooting dogs is very dicey, even under the best of conditions, because there's a whole lot of people who are going to say you shouldn't have shot the dog, Even in this case, hopefully that won't happen. And the other thing was just a police thing that caught my eye, Phil, because they cited the guy, the victim, for not having a dog license.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure that one out. Maybe
It's a slow day in Haverhill.
Maybe they didn't want to seem biased. They wanted to be neutral. They saw that both dogs weren't licensed and wanted to be fair.
and well, would it have made a difference?
No,
You know,
right,
the dogs still would have been doing their doggy thing.
right.
I'm just looking at that going, you know, what are you thinking? Yeah. Traditionally, you know, you have a gun in your home and somebody comes in and starts beating on you and you shoot him and you didn't have your gun registered or whatever it is, locally here anyway. Yeah, the police will look at that prosecutor and go, yeah, so what? You know, they're not going to charge you with a crime. You just been through this traumatic event.
And maybe there's a little more to it than made the print here because, you know,
And this was all the story. I couldn't pull much of a backup on this because who put this in the news? Nobody. You know, it's just it's only at Wave Radio in Haverhill, Massachusetts. You can pull it up, and what it kind of says is word for word what I just read here. It's a good shoot. Years ago when I was working as court bailiff, we had lots of cases and that were serious and rapes and murders and assaults and so on and so on. The only time we almost had to clear the courtroom was on a dog shooting. There was a bad dog shooting. These teenage kids got their .22 rifle and they found a little dog, and they shot at it and it ran under a car, and they came over the car and they leaned out of the car and they shot at the dog a couple more times and killed the dog. And a horrible thing to do, but I've been in courtrooms with all these kind of people that were really bad guys, and we had protesters and buttons and matching shirts and screaming and yelling and so forth. Actually had to, I almost arrested a couple of these. You're going to take off that button that says, you know, save the dog, or, you know. Animal lovers are passionate people.
They are
Put the
passionate.
15-year-old kid in jail.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, he deserved to get, and he got some serious problems.
Oh,
But
yeah,
he's a little
sure.
kid and he's shooting with his 22. You know, I'm not condoning it. I'm telling you the audience reaction, the people reaction is very tough on these sometimes.
Mhm.
But that seems like it's a little bit different, Bob, and that the
Yeah,
kids
well-
were just being more malicious than in this situation. They
Yeah,
were
well,
defending themselves.
It was. That's why I put the note about there's going to be some hassle over this because they're not going to get the details right of what happened. They're going to get this guy shot a pit bull, and you know, a grown-up adult just shot a pit bull. Why would he want? You know, he shouldn't do that.
Right.
You know how the story goes, and you get 10% of the actual media
Yes.
for real. We're offering now basic and advanced pistol classes at the gun store. Again, on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. Here's another dog shooting, good shooting. The Citizen Patriot and M Live in Jackson, Michigan. I had to find a couple dog shootings. I had to go to some live sources.
Mhm.
Same day, the 24th, 6:45 a.m. on a Tuesday, an officer with the Jackson Police Department responded to the 700 block of 3rd Street to investigate a report of a vicious dog had been shot by a neighbor. Speaking to the man at the scene, the officer learned 2 pit bulls had wandered onto his property and advanced toward a woman. The one dog bit at the woman, latching onto her clothing. She was able to break free and retreat inside her home. The man living at the residence subsequently tried warding off the dogs. I have no idea what that means. Maybe
Warning shots. I don't know.
stop or I'll shoot.
Yeah.
Hence the comment in the other case. Standing on his property with a gun, he shot one of the pit bulls after it advanced towards him. The dog died of its injuries while the second dog ran off. That works with people too.
Mhm.
Usually when you shoot the first guy, the other guy
Yeah, it
runs.
runs away.
Police determined the man was in his rights to protect himself, though the dog owner faces a misdemeanor charge of loose animals. The woman did not sustain any injuries in the incident. The ages of the people involved were not available. They're all adults, according to the police department. Here, it would certainly appear to the guy holding the gun that the woman was injured. The dog only got a hold of her clothing and kind of spun her around, but her flesh wasn't bitten at all. So clearly, again, this is a good shooting.
Although it happened from reading this or from listening to you, it seems like it happened after she had already retreated in the house, right? The
yeah.
threat
And that's a
was
good point.
gone,
Yeah,
maybe,
yeah.
or the argument could say that the threat was gone. I mean, I don't know if you've got a,
Well, he said then the
concern.
dog was advancing on him, was what he said, but the witnesses aren't really there. It's
Yeah, and that whole point of him trying to ward off the dogs, that's going to be a big question because, if she was,
that could mean a lot of different things.
yeah,
right?
yeah, if she was inside and safe, then the threat to her clearly was no longer present. And whatever this guy tried to do to ward off the dogs, maybe that was a decision he regrets doing because he could have gone inside with her and called 911.
One would think, just
Yeah.
like you would with people.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's a solution or something to consider in this. Did he need to stay out there? And he's going to do the I was standing on my own property routine or whatever, but that's fine. You don't have to retreat in your own property, but sometimes it just makes more sense. Yeah.
Save yourself a lot of grief.
I mean, the guy can certainly climb. Every year we see dog attacks where people are killed.
Mm-hmm.
Children are killed, particularly elderly people are killed trying to, buy a dog doing something. So you really can't say to the guy, this was a safe situation. There could have been obviously serious injuries from it. But again, you got to consider, just like we do with people, size, aggression level, so forth and so on. And if you can get away without shooting, try that. This is another place where I tend to say, which you will both say, never, never, warning shots. If you've got a clear, if the dog's out there growling at you and you put one in the dirt right in front of them, it's loud and sometimes they run away. And if you know where the bullet's going, everybody in the world that teaches firearms except me says never fire warning shots no matter what. And that's where I disagree with the rest of the world for things like this.
Well, and a lot of that, police officers aren't allowed to fire warning shots. That's standard policy, I think, in every department across the U.S. Simply because of the liability of that.
Yeah, the bullet's going somewhere.
Right. And as far as citizens go, I don't know if they are held to that same standard.
I have seen in court, and Pally, you may have seen this, where the warning shot was actually used as a strong tool for the defense. That
Just show their state of mind, their intent.
Yeah, it should be a verbal warning, but it shows if they do an intentional shot that is not aimed at the guy, aimed some safe away, that they were trying not to shoot him. Especially if it's followed by them actually shooting him. Right. It can be, I would think, a very strong thing for the defense. Mm-hmm. And what's the press going to say? Well, rules say you shouldn't fire warning shots. Well, nobody cares about that in a court case. It's, right. Did it hit anybody? If it didn't, all bullets hit something, and, it's really bad if they hit something that's breathing. But if you know where it's going, in the rural areas, the background, whatever, there are cases like this where I would think it would be appropriate. We also offer here in one of our classes, once a month, we do an Eddie Eagle gun safety class for children 5 to 11, fourth Friday of each month. Again, our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, for little kids to teach them don't touch guns. When you find a gun, stop, don't touch, leave the area, and tell an adult. They go a little dance and think it's really a cute thing. You want to come down and watch one of these guys. Yeah. They are really hysterical.
They're my daughter.
Here, this one's really complicated.
Yeah, this one is kind of.
Yeah.
Tribune in South Bend, Indiana, on the 25th, the local woman fired several gunshots Wednesday at a person whom she spotted driving one of 2 vehicles that were stolen from her in the same week, actually a day apart. Police responded at 8:38 a.m. Wednesday to shots fired at the 500 block of Pennsylvania Avenue. The 35-year-old told officers she was the victim of 2 auto thefts. This thing was actually about 4 pages long. This is the really abbreviated version. She said the first theft happened the prior morning after she left her silver BMW warming up outside. Inside the car, she had left the keys to her home and a Dodge Durango, which she also had on the property, and a couple of other cars. On Wednesday morning, she discovered the Durango had also been stolen from outside her home. And as she's explaining that to a neighbor, she sees the Durango drive by, her Durango. So she had a gun, or went in the house and got a gun. I don't know how she had a gun in her hand at the time, but she either pursued it on foot, or another report said she jumped in a vehicle and chased it. You take your choice. There are 14 news stories on this, all that disagree on the details. But anyway, she started chasing after the vehicle and opened fire on it with some kind of gun, presumably a handgun. The vehicle continued driving until it crashed into a house on the 1100 block of California Avenue. This is several blocks away. The driver jumped out and fled in an unknown direction. South Bend Police Captain Robert Hammer, I leave his name in because it's a great name for a police captain, said, "We don't recommend the public take matters into their own hands. Anytime someone witnesses an auto theft or anything of that nature, we advise them to call the police and not confront that person." Valid idea. We all agree that. But there's more. When the woman's being interviewed by the media there, she said that Winter's truck was stolen. It contained the keys to her other vehicles, which we know because the guy came back and stole another one, but also to her home. A few minutes after her pursuit, she said she was out on foot trying to find witnesses. The thief returned and tried to run her down. That's when she felt her life was threatened, and she was aiming at the tires, not the driver. It's unclear if the woman will face criminal charges as of this was written, because it's really unclear as to who's really telling what to whom and whatever.
And they're completely two different stories that would probably take two different avenues.
The police reports don't suggest that the Durango or anyone else was hit by the gunfire. That she did, they recovered it and it had bullet holes in it. So we know that actually happened. Whether he came back and tried to run her down, or this was in the initial confrontation. And we've got a neighborhood here that is about half of them agreeing with her, and nobody actually saw much. Her friends say, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't shoot at a car that was driving away. Obviously, don't chase suspects. If somebody's stealing your truck, even if it's got the keys to your house in it, firing at them while they're driving away is dumb.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, the reason for that is there's no threat there. There is no danger to you. The person's driving by, obviously came back to look for more stuff to steal from the house, since he had keys to the house. And you just can't justify a car driving away and you chasing it down the street and bang, bang, bang. There's no threat there. There's no threat. So you can't say, well, I was in fear of my life or somebody else's life, because that didn't exist.
You've investigated a lot more shootings than I have, obviously, but when she comes with a story that the guy left, he comes back and tries to run her down. He's got the truck.
Mm-hmm.
He's gone.
Yeah.
He comes back and tries to run over her. I got to yell bullshit at the top of my lungs.
I'm calling bull on that one too. And then the other thing, talking to the media, people get all excited and the press is out there sticking microphones in your face and tell us what happened. How do you feel? Yakety yak. The problem with that is every single thing that you put out on the media is going to come back to haunt you when you end up in court over this.
I can assume that would put a defense attorney in a tizzy.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even want him to talk to the police normally.
You don't want him to talk to anybody. You're right. The more statements they make, the bigger problems we have.
She's talking to the press on camera. There's video of her, I did this and he came back, tried to run me down. Therefore, I shot at the tires.
But
if
the evidence
that's
isn't
true,
consistent.
was her life in danger? And so she's just going to shoot at the tires, which, by the way, doesn't stop the truck. If it's running at you, it'll still hit you with a flat tire.
Too much TV.
This is way too much of watching America's Most Wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, I just, we'll have a follow-up on this at some point when Captain Hammer discovers what actually happened. Again, questions or comments to Bob at firedupmail.com, and please friend us on Facebook. The Gun Store, I want to remind everybody, we have our own wedding chapel. We offer what are called shotgun weddings and vow renewals. You can go to our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com, and click special events, and that will give you all sorts of information and things about that. This one is good too.
Don't mess with Texas. Here we go.
This is a shooting in Texas, and I tend not to use those because they tend to be shootings you can't do anywhere else but in Texas. But this one had an interesting point. According to Houston Police Department, just before 5 a.m. On Thursday, the 25th, 2 unknown males kicked the door of an apartment unit. They then entered in an apparent home invasion. The 2 male residents asleep inside in the apartment, they're in separate bedrooms, were awakened by the noise of the intrusion. One of the residents grabbed his shotgun and went out from his bedroom into the living room. At the same time, his roommate was heading out in the living room from his bedroom. When the resident with the shotgun saw the suspects in the darkened living room, he shot at them. His roommate was crossing the room at the same time, apparently behind them. The resident with a shotgun ended up shooting his roommate inside. The suspects were startled and fled the scene. See, a warning shot. What I thought.
Just the warning shot went in somebody.
The accidental shooting victim was taken to a local hospital. He's in stable condition. Houston detectives reviewed the video from security cameras in the hallways of the building, and they're able to see what the suspects look like, and apparently they have a good idea who they are. Yeah, somebody breaks in your house. We don't know if they were armed or not because that never came up. If they had guns, they left with the guns. But this is part of the have a plan.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody's got to know what's going on. If these 2 guys living here, they've got the guns. The guy said to the police he kept the shotgun for home defense in their apartment. So we expect to maybe have to use it, and you have this. We're both going to jump out of our bedrooms and run into the living room. One of us armed, one of us not, and we're in the dark, and I'm going to shoot at the first shadowy figure I see. And apparently what he saw was the bad guys, but he didn't realize his partner was either just in front or just behind.
He didn't read him enough.
As he fired. Yeah. Or he let him too much. The guy's going to be okay, apparently. He'll probably be a little sore, but we don't know what gauge of shotgun or shot size or all that stuff. But in your household, if you're keeping a gun there because you're afraid of home invasions or burglars and stuff, have a plan. You don't have to get that sophisticated.
No.
But it's, like playing street football. Phil, you run over there behind the couch. Pal, you run in the kitchen and, call the police on 911. So we know where Pal is going to be. We know you're going to be behind the couch, and anybody else is a bad guy.
And we have to presume that this, the other roommate, the roommate that got shot, very likely knew that his roommate had the shotgun, and it would just make sense. You let the guy that's got the gun either go ahead or take the aggressive action, and you stand back. Yeah.
And you stay out and let the unarmed guy call 911.
Right.
See if he can get descriptions or run out the back door or something. All this we're talking about 6-7 seconds of all this thing taking place, and there's no time to plan at that point. Everybody's moving. These are very dynamic situations. Everybody's firing and running and ducking and whatever. Can't make the plan then. No. Doesn't work. So talk to whoever you live with about it, especially if you got kids. You don't want the kids wandering downstairs. If the kids are upstairs, tell them if you hear something, stay in your room, lock the bedroom door or whatever, so they're out of it and they're not wandering into the crime scene where you're firing at somebody in the hallway. Talk to people you live with and have a rudimentary plan. We're all going to meet, run out the back door and meet at grandma's house or whatever, is appropriate for your family. It's going to be different for everybody. Have a plan. Again, we offer concealed carry permit classes Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, 3 times a week. Our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. And I didn't pull in 7 because I got into a couple of the things I wanted to put on the air. And we're 15 minutes away. So as I normally do, I want to talk just very briefly about terrorism attacks. You can apply the same thing to home invaders if you like. We have foreign terrorists in the United States that are doing bad things. Even if they're not terrorists, they're just workplace violence kind of guys. There happen to be Muslims that are cutting people's heads off, but anyway, I don't want to go there. If you're caught in a terrorist attack, something is actually happening in front of you, first try to run. If you can't run, hide. If you can't hide or run, attack the terrorist and fight him any way you can. Courageous citizens can always overcome an armed terrorist if they all just jump on them and start beating them and kicking them. If you have a concealed firearm, carry it. Better to have it and not need it than the other way around. So have your gun. And this applies to some of these cases where it's just a civilian crime. Have your gun. If you say to yourself, I'm not going to carry my gun because I'm not going anyplace dangerous, you're a fool.
Everywhere is dangerous.
It follows
Exactly.
you. This is a legal thing. I like this. This was in BBC. An Egyptian military court made a mistake in sentencing a 4-year-old boy to life in prison for murder. You think our legal system screwed up? The military has acknowledged that, and a spokesman, Colonel Mohammed Samir, said the court should have sentenced the 16-year-old boy with a similar name instead. Ahmad Mansour Kwari Ali was convicted along with 115 others in connection with riots by the Muslim Brotherhood in Fayum province in 2014. That resulted in numerous deaths. This was part of a riot when there were riot police trying to control everything. So they're in a big mess over there, and they're under martial law and so forth. Where I'm looking at is the court system now. His lawyer had to submit documents proving the defendant was 1-year-old at the time of the murders. Apparently, the sentencing court is different than the trial court. And I know court records get screwed up, but the attorneys apparently had to go to court and prove that the defendant who did this crime is 16. He was 13 when the crimes were committed. The guy they're sentencing was only 1 when the crimes were committed. And he's charged, with terrorism in an event where a lot of people were killed, of being part of the mob and whatever, and fighting with the police or whatever it was. Just a guy with the wrong name.
I don't even know how this happens, because you would assume that there would be at some point some appearance where the person would have to show up for a proceeding as serious as a sentence.
But they don't. They have trials in absentia all the time. You have a whole bunch of guys in a cage, and they read off their names and say that it. And
but was the 4-year-old in the cage? Do you know what I mean?
No,
like that's where I don't understand.
It was a 13-year-old of the same name, and somehow the paperwork got
all screwed up.
Got screwed up, and the court sentenced a kid who was 1 year old at the time of the riot as being part of the murderous mob.
I must say that I'm quite impressed as you were able to pronounce that name.
I thought he did a good job too.
I've been working on it. But even there, the actual defendant is 13 years old, and he's getting a life sentence.
Well, and we have
he's 13 years old when the crime was committed, and 13-year-olds can kill people. I don't doubt that. And we're dealing with a country here under martial law because of all the number of deaths and the street crime is unbelievable. Hopefully, the United States will never get to this point. And if they ever
what
do,
kind of system is that
where you don't notice that a kid is 1 year old
and 4 years old at the time you sentence him to life? I don't know what to say.
Well, that was part of the plea deal and all the stuff, that if he pled guilty, he could be sentenced to life with the possibility of getting out later on. But
that's just crazy.
When he finally got an attorney, instead of just being part of the general mob, we discovered he's 1 year old. And whoops, wrong guy. And the attorney was able to convince the court, he's 1. like he can't walk and.
Like you better have diapers at the prison.
I
Well,
know
he's
they still
four
Better
now,
have, yeah,
so,
okay,
yeah.
well then hopefully he's out of diapers.
If you have a corporate event you're planning, we do, as everybody knows, machine gun shooting here in Las Vegas. Contact Melissa at thegunstorelasvegas.com and she'll set you up. This is, so we got 10 minutes. Make sure I cover something that's really cool. Yeah, let me skip to page 12 here, or article 11. This is a story from the View Journal and a lot of other places. On the 25th, a 60-year-old husband and father that had just left work as a porter at the Paris Las Vegas Yorks graveyard had just stepped off the bus on East Lake Mead Boulevard headed for home. He was 7 houses away from his home last Saturday night at 1:15 a.m. when a group of young men swarmed him, robbed him, shot him, and fled. He tried walking, but with the gunshot wound, he made it only about 10 feet before collapsing and dying just after 1:17 or 1:18 a.m. The only thing taken in this robbery murder was his cell phone. He is the sole provider for his family, leaving a wife and 2 children aged 12 and 17. Metro Homicide Lieutenant Dan McGrath said he was completely innocent. This is unacceptable. There's nothing we can say. He absolutely did nothing wrong. He's just a guy, got off the bus, walking to his house, 1:15. These suspects have been linked to a handful of other street robberies prior to this murder. They're described as 4 or 5 black males, 18 to 20 years old, perhaps younger.
You know,
I am just so, and McGrath, I don't know if you've seen any of his interviews over this issue. It's,
yeah, I know Dan.
well, I'm sure you do.
His brother and I worked in homicide together, and I can tell you that the guys that are handling this case, plus the rest of the guys, are going to take this one personal, because this was as innocent as someone can be by a bunch of stupid little street thugs that killed somebody over a cell phone. This is going to get a lot of attention, and they're going to work this one as hard as they can. I've done it. Everybody in homicide gets cases like this where you just don't quit until you come up with a conclusion on this. It's ridiculous. You know, the streets of Vegas are getting, and I hate to say it, the streets of Vegas are getting more dangerous every year, and this just typifies that point. And
this is, you can't even express
No.
anybody
So
that's
sad, so senseless.
exactly.
for a cell phone, or maybe just for entertainment. You know,
I mean, I'm sure there was several of them. If they would have asked him for it, he probably would have just gave it to them, and they could have been on their way. So,
there's just, you know, hopefully these guys will get what's coming to them. I'm just, how can you?
This is when we need somebody like Dexter around.
We need Donald Trump to be the sheriff. You know? Yeah. And before I get the phone calls, I did, or the emails, I did describe them as 4 or 5 black males. The police description. However, of these people, if you are approached at 1 o'clock in the morning by 4 or 5 Chinese guys, or Cuban guys, or white guys, I suggest you treat them the same way, because this is just the description of these guys are looking for. This is done by lots of folks of lots of colors.
Yeah, you know, hopefully this particular area of town is not really known for being very helpful to the police when things like this happen. But in this set of circumstances, it's happened before. They put that away and will make anonymous calls or somehow get the information fed to the cops that are working this case, just because it's just so heinous and so pointless. You know, it's not like these are 2 drug dealers shooting it out on the street. In that case, nobody saw anything at all, even the guy that was doing the shooting. But if something like this, there's, you know, hopefully there's going to be a lot of cooperation from the people in this neighborhood.
It's just disgusting. Couple of things. We got a Crossroads of the West gun show this weekend, March 4 and 5, Cashman Field downtown. We're going to be there selling our range brass. We'll try to be there Saturday. If you have personal questions or want to ask me about something, I'm usually can make that from about 11 to 1 or so. And you can, if you want to ask something in person. And WIN, WHIN, the Wildlife Habitat Improvement in Nevada, is having their annual dinner March 12 at the Gold Coast. They do habitat saving for all sorts of species of Nevada wildlife. Great organization. Tickets can be had by calling 702-769-1613. If you didn't get that, this is on YouTube and you can play it over again and get it. 769-1613. Rocky Mountain Gun Show is operating on April 2nd and 3rd in Reno. They're still seeking a new venue here in the Las Vegas area. They want to stay in the south end of town. I spoke to the guy from the show yesterday, and they're working on it. They have a couple of deals close, but right now Rocky Mountain will be in Reno if you want to go up there. We'll be back next Tuesday from 5 to 6 right here on 1400 AM radio and YouTube at Fired Up with Bob Irwin, with my first guest, attorney Andrea Lee Bloom, who's a real cutie pie and a incredibly good attorney. Thanks for listening on the radio and watching us on YouTube. Remember, you can send questions or comments to Bob at firedupmail.com, and be sure and friend us on Facebook at Fired Up with Bob Irwin. I should have about 4 minutes left, I think. Something like that. About 2 minutes. The Firearms Network is a blog that carries this show, actually, under firearms.net. You can look it up. Ran an article about we won one in D.C. A district court there overturned some rules in Washington, D.C. They canceled what was a gun registration thing that said owners of handguns have to re-register their firearms every 3 years, and it struck down there are more that you can't buy more than one handgun per month regulation. In the same decision, they upheld the registration of long guns, fees for registering guns. Owners of firearms have to pass a safety class, and requirement the gun owner appear in person and be fingerprinted and photographed in order to get a firearm in Washington, D.C. They have a huge crime rate. You think this actually helps?
Yeah, it's huge.
The question is the constitutional one. Does the Constitution allow the government to charge fees to exercise your Second Amendment rights? Can they charge you money? They charge us money here to carry one concealed, which I think is wrong too. But, you know, we don't charge people to assemble. We don't charge them to, well, we do. We charge them to write stuff now. But fingerprints and photographs are required if you want to keep a firearm in your house in Washington, D.C., and fees for that. I don't really think that's much of a win, but we got the one gun a month thing reversed.
Right.
But it's being appealed by D.C. courts. So,
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, yeah, they have a horrible crime rate there. Massive gun crimes occurring all the time, but
Not by people with registered guns, right?
exactly the point.
this is to keep a gun in your house. I mean, that's it. And we're talking months to get through the system actually to get that done.
It's almost like a booking photo. You know, you go fingerprint in and you got your photograph in the
If you
system.
want one, they have a committee that decides whether or not you pass. And if you don't pass their whatever it is,
Boy,
they don't respond. You have to sue them to go, how come I didn't get my gun approved? And you know,
that could be so subjective too.
anyway, this will allow people to buy more than one gun a month in DC, and that's nice. But this is 2 steps forward and 3 giant steps back. There are people in the government that believe armed citizens are a danger to the government, and I think they're not. Thank you for listening to us on the radio, 1400 AM, and watching on YouTube. We'll be back next week, and Thanks for being with Fired Up.
Have a good night.
Good night.
Night.
That's crazy.